It was a stormy Friday night when my phone buzzed with a trembling little voice saying, "Uncle Daniel, I'm alone. I'm starving. Please help." My blood froze. My 8-year-old niece, Sophie, was supposed to be safe at my parents' house, yet something in her voice screamed danger. I grabbed my keys, heart pounding, rain slamming against the windows. That call changed everything. Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from? Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for what I found next. It'll shake you. The storm outside was relentless, a furious symphony of rain and thunder pounding against the roof. My apartment's lights flickered as wind howled through the cracks of the old window frames. I was sitting on the couch, half watching a baseball rerun, when my phone lit up with an unknown number. For a second, I thought about ignoring it, until I saw the time. 9:47 p.m. Something about it felt wrong. I swiped the screen and answered. Hello. At first, there was only static and the faint sound of rain. Then, a small, trembling voice whispered, "Uncle Daniel?" My stomach dropped. "Sophie? Honey, what's going on? Why are you calling me this late?" She sniffled audibly, her words barely holding together through sobs. "I'm alone. I'm so hungry. Grandma and Grandpa went out. They locked the door. Please help. Uncle, please." For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. My parents? Leaving her alone? That made no sense. My father never even let the front door stay unlocked after dark, and my mother had a routine for everything. Something was off, terribly off. "Sweetheart, where are they? Did they say where they were going?" I tried to keep my voice calm, though my pulse hammered in my ears. "I don't know," she said between sobs. "They were angry. Grandpa said I was bad. He said I needed to learn. Then they left." My hands clenched into fists. My father's temper had been bad when I was a kid, but I thought he'd mellowed with age. The thought of him yelling at Sophie, his dead daughter's child, made bile rise in my throat. "Sophie, listen carefully," I said, standing and grabbing my jacket. "You stay where you are, okay? Don't go outside. I'm coming right now." "Uncle Daniel," her voice trembled. "It's really dark. I hear noises. I'm scared. I know, honey. I'm on my way. Keep talking to me." I fumbled for my car keys, shoved my phone between my shoulder and ear, and slipped into my boots. Rain lashed against the door the moment I opened it, instantly soaking my jeans. The streets glistened under the flickering glow of dying streetlights. "Uncle." Sophie's voice was fading in and out through the storm. "I'm driving, sweetheart. Stay calm for me, okay? You're doing so well." "I try to be good," she whispered faintly. "But Grandpa said Mommy was watching me from the bad place. He said I had her evil in me." My heart seized. "What?" "Sophie, don't listen to him, okay? Mommy loved you. She was the kindest person I knew." She didn't respond, just quiet sobbing on the other end. The wind howled louder, shaking my car as I sped through flooded streets. Each flash of lightning illuminated the road for just a second, enough to guide me toward the old family farmhouse, the same house I swore I'd never step foot in again after Emily's funeral. As I turned down the dirt road leading to it, my tires splashed through deep puddles. The trees bent under the storm's fury, their branches thrashing like angry arms. I could already see the faint outline of the house up ahead, dark, lifeless, the porch light flickering weakly. My stomach knotted tighter with every passing second. "Sophie, I'm almost there," I said, gripping the wheel. "Do you see any lights on inside?" "No," she whispered. "It's cold, and it smells bad. Please hurry." The line suddenly crackled, then went silent. "Sophie? Sophie," I shouted, but all I heard was static. My heart pounded as I threw the car into park right in front of the gate. The wind nearly tore the door off when I stepped out. I could barely see through the rain, but I knew this place too well. The sagging fence, the rusted mailbox, the peeling white paint. It looked haunted now. I ran toward the porch, soaked to the bone, every instinct screaming that something inside was very, very wrong. And as thunder split the sky, I realized that this wasn't just a rescue. It was a reckoning, one that had been building for years. By the time I reached the front gate, the storm had turned the dirt road into a shallow river. Water rushed around my boots as I pushed the gate open. It creaked on its rusted hinges, a sound that sent a chill straight through my spine. The old farmhouse stood ahead like a ghost from another life. Dark windows, sagging roof, the faint yellow glow of a flickering bulb behind the tattered curtains. I hesitated for half a second, my breath visible in the cold air. I'd grown up here. Every corner, every step on that porch used to be familiar. But that night, it felt foreign, menacing, like the house itself didn't want me back. "Sophie," I yelled, cupping my hands around my mouth to cut through the thunder. "It's Uncle Daniel. I'm here." No answer. Only the rain, pounding relentlessly. I climbed the porch steps. The old wood groaned under my weight. The porch light blinked, buzzing with that high-pitched hum I used to hear every night as a kid before Dad would switch it off to save power. The doormat was soaked, the paint on the front door peeling away like old skin. I knocked once, then twice, harder. "Mom? Dad?" Nothing. My gut twisted tighter. I turned the handle. It wasn't even locked. That alone made the hair rise on the back of my neck. My father never left doors unlocked. Ever. I stepped inside. The smell hit first, stale air mixed with damp wood, something sour underneath. I flicked the light switch, but the bulb only flickered weakly before giving out entirely. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, landing on the living room. It looked like a war zone. Chairs overturned, old family photos scattered across the floor. The dining table was covered with dusty plates, half-eaten food, and what looked like religious pamphlets covered in smeared ink. My mother's sewing machine sat in the corner, surrounded by torn pieces of fabric. "Sophie," I called again, moving cautiously. "Honey, it's Uncle Daniel. You can come out." A faint sound answered, a whimper. Up the stairs. I froze, straining to hear. The sound came again, soft, broken, like someone trying to hold back tears. I moved toward the staircase, my flashlight trembling slightly in my grip. The walls were lined with old portraits of our family. Dad in his Sunday suit, Mom smiling faintly, Emily holding baby Sophie. But something was wrong. Every single photo was turned backward. My throat went dry. I remembered the last time I saw my father do that, after Emily's funeral. He said it was to keep the spirits from wandering. The stairs creaked under each step. The closer I got to the top, the louder the storm outside seemed to grow, as if the house itself was echoing the chaos. When I reached the second floor, the hallway was pitch black except for the lightning flashing through the window at the end. My flashlight beam caught glimpses of wallpaper peeling off, water stains running down the walls. Then a sound, a quiet gasp, from behind the cracked door of the guest bedroom. I pushed it open slowly. There she was, Sophie, curled up on the bed, a blanket wrapped around her tiny body, eyes wide and red from crying. Her hair was messy, her cheeks streaked with dirt. The sight made my chest tighten painfully. "Sophie," I breathed, kneeling beside her. The moment she saw me, she jumped into my arms, clutching my jacket like she'd never let go. "Don't let them come back," she whispered, voice trembling. "Please, Uncle Daniel, don't let them come back." I held her tighter, feeling her little body shivering against me. "You're safe now. I promise. I'm here." She pulled back slightly, her eyes full of fear. "They said the devil is in me, because I talked to Mommy in my dreams." I froze. "What do you mean?" She said Mommy was calling me from heaven. But Grandpa got angry. He said it wasn't heaven, that it was the devil pretending to be her. Lightning flashed, illuminating her pale face for a split second. That same sick feeling I'd had as a child when Dad preached about sin and punishment came roaring back. My hands shook, not from fear of the storm, but from rage. I looked around the room. No toys, no warmth, just cold walls, a bed, and a chair pushed against the door from the inside, as if she'd been trying to barricade herself. My heart pounded harder. Whatever had been happening here, it wasn't just neglect. It was something darker. I took a deep breath and said softly, "We're leaving, Sophie. Right now." She nodded silently, still clutching my sleeve. As we moved toward the hallway, a loud thud came from downstairs, something heavy, like a door slamming shut. I froze. Sophie's eyes widened. "Uncle Daniel," she whispered. "They're back." My pulse hammered in my throat. I pulled Sophie closer, pressing a finger to my lips to keep her quiet. The house had gone eerily still, except for the steady drip of rain leaking through the roof. That sound was almost deafening now, echoing through the hollow rooms. I shone my flashlight down the hall. "Stay behind me," I whispered. She nodded, clutching my jacket tightly. We crept downstairs step by step, the wood moaning under our weight. I expected to see my parents standing there, but the living room was empty. The front door was still shut. The sound I'd heard, whatever it was, had come from somewhere else. Then I smelled it. That sharp, sour rot again. Stronger now. The beam of my flashlight swept across the room and stopped on the kitchen doorway. The smell was coming from there. When I stepped inside, my stomach turned. The kitchen looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months. The sink was piled high with crusted dishes. The counter was sticky with something dark and congealed. Open cans of food sat half-spoiled, surrounded by flies. A Bible lay in the middle of the table, pages wrinkled, covered in scribbled notes. But the worst part was the refrigerator. I opened it, and the stench hit me full force: rotten milk, molding bread, and something worse. Expired medicine bottles labeled "For Sophie" sat beside half-eaten jars of baby food. I picked one up and squinted. The liquid inside was cloudy, yellowish. I didn't even want to imagine what they'd been giving her. Sophie stood in the doorway, staring at the mess. "They said I couldn't eat unless I prayed first," she whispered. "Sometimes I prayed for hours, but they never came back." My chest tightened. "Jesus," I muttered, shutting the fridge door hard. I turned and noticed something else: scraps of paper pinned to the wall beside the window. Dozens of them, overlapping like feathers. I moved closer to read them. Each one was handwritten in my father's stiff, slanted script. "Cleanse the child's soul. Fasting brings purity. Punishment is mercy." A cold shiver crawled up my spine. These weren't just strict rules, they were obsessions. Then, something caught my eye near the hallway leading to the basement. A small padlock on the door handle. "Sophie," I said quietly, "did they ever take you down there?" She hesitated, biting her lip. "Only once. When I disobeyed. Grandpa said I needed time to think with God." My stomach sank. I pulled a screwdriver from the junk drawer, jammed it into the padlock, and twisted until the metal snapped. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The smell that rolled up was damp, earthy, and something else. I aimed my flashlight down the steps. The beam flickered over cracked cement walls and a single, bare light bulb dangling from the ceiling. The air was colder there, like the whole basement had been sealed off from life. At the bottom, I saw it. A tiny cot against the far wall. A thin blanket. A wooden chair facing it, with a Bible open on the seat. On the wall behind the cot, written in black marker, "Obedience is salvation." And beneath it, a small chain attached to the wall, ending in a metal shackle. I felt my knees go weak. They hadn't just neglected her, they'd imprisoned her. I turned away, trying to breathe. My flashlight beam shook as I whispered, "What the hell did they do to you, Sophie?" Her voice quivered from the top of the stairs. "I was bad," she said softly. "They said Mommy's blood made me bad. I had to pray it away. That was it. Whatever remained of the boy who once tried to please his father died right there in that basement." I was no longer afraid of George and Margaret Simmons. I was done being their obedient son. I walked up the steps, took Sophie by the hand, and said, "We're leaving. Right now." She hesitated. "But what if they come back?" "They won't," I said firmly. "Not tonight. Not ever again." I grabbed her small coat hanging by the door, wrapped her in my jacket, and led her toward the porch. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the front yard like daylight for a second. Then headlights. Two bright beams cutting through the rain, pulling up the gravel drive. Sophie froze. "It's them." I squeezed her hand tighter, heart pounding so loud it drowned the storm. It was time to face the people who had raised me and nearly destroyed her. The glare of the headlights hit my eyes like a flash grenade. My heart jumped into my throat as the familiar shape of my father's old Ford truck came grinding up the gravel drive. Even through the storm, I could hear the engine's uneven rattle, the same one I grew up listening to every Sunday morning when he drove us to church. They were back. Sophie's fingers dug into my sleeve. "Uncle Daniel, please," she whispered. "Don't let him take me." "I won't," I said, my voice lower now, steady but trembling beneath the surface. "Stay behind me." The truck stopped abruptly, its headlights still cutting through the rain. The driver's door flew open, and my father, George Simmons, stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered even at 65, his gray hair plastered to his head by rain. His face was set in the same iron expression I remembered from my childhood: cold, certain, righteous. My mother followed slowly behind him, holding a shawl over her head. Even from the porch, I could see the terror and confusion in her eyes. "Daniel," my father barked. "What in God's name are you doing here?" I stepped forward, shielding Sophie with my body. She called me Dad. She said she was alone, starving. You left her here in the middle of a storm. His eyes flashed with anger. You have no right to come here and question me about how I raised my granddaughter. You lost that right when you turned your back on this family and on the Lord. My fists clenched. You mean when I stopped letting you control my life with fear and guilt? Yeah, I remember that day clearly. Don't you dare take that tone with me, he snapped, stepping closer. You think you know better than me? That child is sick in her soul, Daniel. She speaks to things she shouldn't. She disobeys. She lies. Lies. I pointed toward the house. You locked her in a basement. You starved her, drugged her, and told her she was evil because she dreams about her dead mother. That's not faith. That's cruelty. My father's face twisted. You have no idea what you're talking about. Emily was weak, Daniel. She lost her way. I'm not going to let her daughter follow that same path to damnation. The mention of my sister's name made my blood boil. I stepped closer until I was face to face with him. You broke her, Dad. You shamed her, you controlled her, and when she finally escaped, you called her a sinner. Now you're doing the same thing to her child. Behind me, Sophie whimpered. Grandpa, please stop. He turned his glare toward her. You keep quiet, girl. You'll speak when spoken to. That was it. I stepped between them, pushing him back a little. If you ever raise your voice at her again, so help me. He shoved me hard in the chest. I stumbled back a step, but didn't fall. Don't you threaten me in my own home, he roared, spittle flying from his lips. You're no better than your sister. Weak, lost, corrupted by the world. Mom grabbed his arm, her voice trembling. George, please, stop. Not in front of the child. He shook her off like she was nothing. Stay out of this, Margaret. Her eyes filled with tears. She's just a little girl. She's frightened. Can't you see that? Frightened of what? He shouted. Of love? Of salvation? The Lord disciplines those he loves. I could feel something inside me snap. The years of silence, the guilt, the fear, it all came flooding out. No, Dad. You don't love anyone. You just want control. You use God as an excuse to hurt people who don't obey you. You think you're righteous? You're just cruel. For a moment, everything went still. The rain hammered the roof. Lightning flashed behind him, and I saw something flicker across his face. Not guilt, not regret, but pure, burning hatred. He raised his hand. Before I even realized it, I caught his wrist midair. The slap never landed. I looked straight into his eyes and said, voice shaking but steady, if you ever touch her again, I swear to God, I'll call the police. He froze, shocked. Maybe for the first time in his life, he realized I wasn't that scared little boy anymore. Sophie clung to my arm, sobbing quietly. My mother stood there, shaking, tears streaming down her face. Daniel, she whispered, please, don't take her. She needs to be here. She needs guidance. Guidance. I snapped. She needs love. Safety. Food. A home that doesn't make her feel like she's possessed for missing her mom. Mom covered her face and cried harder. We only did what we thought was right. The pastor said. Then your pastor's wrong, I said coldly. And so are you if you keep believing this. Thunder cracked loud enough to shake the windows. I took Sophie's hand. We're leaving. Right now. My father shouted after us. If you walk out that door, you're dead to this family, Daniel. You'll burn for this. I turned once at the threshold, rain pouring down my face. You already buried this family a long time ago, Dad. Then I pulled Sophie into the storm. The rain hit us like knives as we ran for the car. She was crying into my coat, terrified and shaking. I buckled her in, my hands trembling with adrenaline. My father's voice echoed behind us, furious and hollow. You'll regret this. She'll damn you both. I slammed the car door and started the engine. The headlights cut through the dark road ahead, and as we sped away, I looked at Sophie. She was staring out the window, eyes wide, silent. You're safe now, I whispered. I promise. For the first time that night, I meant every word. The rain hadn't let up by the time we reached my apartment. Water poured off the roof in shimmering sheets as I pulled into the small parking lot, headlights reflecting off the puddles like shards of broken glass. Sophie hadn't said a word the entire ride. Her tiny hands were folded tightly in her lap, her eyes fixed on the blurred window. When I cut the engine, silence filled the car, except for the soft rumble of thunder fading in the distance. I turned to her. We're here, sweetheart. She blinked and looked at me, eyes puffy from crying. Is it okay if I come inside? My throat tightened. Of course it is. You're home now. I grabbed my jacket and wrapped it around her as we ran through the rain, up the stairs, and into my small one-bedroom apartment. The moment we stepped in, the warmth hit us. A faint smell of coffee, the hum of the heater, the soft light from the lamp I'd forgotten to turn off before leaving. Sophie stood just inside the doorway, dripping wet, clutching the edge of the jacket like it was armor. "You can take off your shoes, honey," I said softly. "I'll get you a towel." I tossed her one from the bathroom and set a small blanket on the couch. She looked around like she'd never been in a place like this, like safety itself was something unfamiliar. "Do you want something to eat?" I asked. Her stomach growled before she could answer. "I'm not supposed to eat," she said quietly. "Grandpa said I have to pray first. If I don't, bad things happen." I knelt in front of her, so we were eye to eye. "Hey, listen to me. You didn't do anything wrong. You can eat whenever you're hungry, okay? You don't need anyone's permission." Her lower lip trembled. "Are you sure God won't be mad?" I swallowed hard. "I'm sure. God wants you to be safe and fed, and I think He's really proud of how brave you've been tonight." Something shifted in her expression, like a small weight lifted from her shoulders. She nodded. I heated up a can of chicken noodle soup, the same kind I used to eat when I was a broke mechanic just starting out. The smell filled the apartment, warm and comforting. Sophie sat on the couch, wrapped in the blanket, her eyes following every move I made in the kitchen. When I set the bowl in front of her, she hesitated, hands trembling around the spoon. Then she took a small bite. A moment later, another. And then she started eating like she hadn't tasted food in days. Watching her, I had to look away for a second. My chest hurt, not from anger this time, but from guilt. I'd let years pass without checking in on her, assuming my parents would do the right thing. I'd convinced myself that staying away was easier. When the bowl was empty, she looked up at me. "Thank you, Uncle Daniel." Her voice was small, but the gratitude in it cut straight through me. "You're welcome, sweetheart." I showed her the bathroom, gave her one of my clean shirts to sleep in. It practically swallowed her whole, and helped her brush her teeth with the spare toothbrush I'd never used. She smiled a little at the toothpaste flavor. "It's minty," she said, her first real smile all night. Afterward, she curled up on the couch while I found an old pillow and blanket for myself on the floor nearby. But she reached out, grabbing my hand. "Can you stay here until I fall asleep?" she asked. Of course. Her small fingers wrapped around mine as her breathing slowly steadied. I watched her for a long while, the rise and fall of her chest, the way the lamplight softened her face. She looked peaceful, something I doubted she'd felt in a long, long time. But sleep didn't come for me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of that basement, those words on the wall, "Obedience is salvation." I thought about my father's face when I stopped his hand mid-swing. The rage. The disbelief. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. My thumb hovered over the call icon for a long time before I opened my email app instead. The words came slowly, each one burning as I typed. "To whom it may concern, I need to report a case of child abuse. The victim is my niece, 8 years old. The perpetrators are my parents." I hesitated, reading it again. It felt unreal. My family, my own blood. But then I glanced at Sophie, asleep and safe for the first time in who knows how long, and the hesitation vanished. I hit send. Then I whispered to myself, barely audible under the hum of the heater, "You're safe now, Sophie." I swear it. For the first time in years, I didn't care what my parents thought of me. I finally knew what it meant to do the right thing. The next morning came gray and heavy, the storm finally easing into a quiet drizzle. My apartment smelled faintly of coffee and rain-soaked earth. For a few seconds, I didn't know where I was, until I saw the small figure on the couch. Sophie was still asleep, curled up in my oversized shirt, clutching the sleeve like it was a teddy bear. I sat there watching her for a long while. She looked peaceful, but there were faint bruises around her wrists. Seeing those marks made something inside me twist painfully. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was determined. It was time to stop this for good. I picked up my phone and called Child Protective Services first. My voice shook as I spoke, but I laid everything out clearly. The neglect, the basement, the medicine, the written notes. The woman on the line was calm and professional. She asked for Sophie's full name, age, and current location, then told me they'd dispatch someone immediately along with law enforcement. By the time I hung up, my hands were slick with sweat. About 40 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. Two officers stood outside, one middle-aged man with kind eyes and another younger, serious-looking woman in uniform. Behind them was a woman with a clipboard and a badge reading CPS Investigator, Karen Holt. "Daniel Simmons?" she asked. "Yes. Thank you for coming." They stepped inside, glancing around the apartment. Sophie stirred on the couch, blinking sleepily. The moment she saw the uniforms, she stiffened and sat up. "It's okay," I said quickly, kneeling beside her. "These people are here to help us. Remember how I told you I was going to make sure you're safe? This is part of that." Karen knelt down too, her voice gentle. "Hi, Sophie. My name's Karen. Your uncle told us you had a really hard night. Do you feel okay talking to me a little?" Sophie hesitated, her small fingers gripping my sleeve. "Are you going to take me away?" Karen smiled softly. "Not unless we need to, sweetheart. We just want to make sure you're safe and happy. You've been very brave." After a moment, Sophie nodded slowly. Karen sat beside her while one of the officers quietly asked me for details. I told them everything. How Sophie had called me, how I'd found her, the state of the house, and the confrontation with my parents. When I mentioned the basement, both officers exchanged a look. "Would you be willing to come with us back to the property?" the older officer asked. "We'll need you to identify the areas you described." "Of course," I said. They loaded us into two separate cars. Sophie rode with Karen, while I followed behind. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving behind a dull gray mist that hung over the fields. The drive felt longer this time, like the road itself was reluctant to lead me back there. When we arrived, the farmhouse looked even worse in daylight. Shuttered windows, a collapsed section of the porch roof, the front door hanging crookedly on its hinges. Karen crouched beside Sophie before they got out. "You can stay in the car if you want. You don't have to go inside." Sophie nodded quickly. I was glad. She didn't need to see any of it again. Inside, the officers took photos of everything. The overturned chairs, the filthy kitchen, the walls covered in my father's twisted notes. When we reached the basement, I warned them about the smell. The door creaked open, and as the beam of the flashlight hit the cot, Karen gasped quietly. She covered her mouth, her face pale. "Oh my God," she whispered. "How long has this been here?" "I don't know," I said quietly, "but I'm guessing a while." They photographed the shackle, the writings on the wall, and the medication bottles. Then one of the officers found something I hadn't noticed before, a stack of journals on a shelf near the furnace. He flipped one open, frowning. "It's your father's handwriting?" I nodded, my chest tightening. The pages were filled with passages about Sophie, how she needed cleansing, how she spoke to demons in her dreams, how he must not let the child's corruption spread. It made me sick to my stomach. They collected everything as evidence. Outside, I could see another patrol car arriving. My parents were standing near it, Mom crying, Dad stone-faced as they led him toward the officers. He didn't even look at me when they cuffed him. Mom tried to run toward me, sobbing. "Daniel, please. We didn't mean." She just needed discipline. I shook my head slowly. "Mom, stop. You both need help. But I can't protect you from this." Her voice broke. "She's just a child, Daniel. She doesn't understand." "That's exactly the point," I said, my voice trembling. "She's a child. And you forgot what that means." They took my father first, then my mother. Watching them drive away in the back of that car was the strangest feeling I've ever had. Relief and grief tangled together until I couldn't tell one from the other. Karen put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Daniel. You probably saved her life." I looked toward the car where Sophie was waiting. She saw me and waved shyly through the window. For the first time, I saw a hint of peace on her face. "I hope so," I said quietly. Back at the office later that day, I signed the papers making me Sophie's temporary guardian. Karen explained there'd be a hearing in a few weeks to make it permanent. When she handed me the folder, she smiled faintly. "Most kids don't open up this fast, but she trusts you. That's rare." I nodded, holding back tears. "She's family, and she's all I've got left." The weeks that followed felt like waking up from a nightmare you didn't realize you'd been trapped in for years. Sophie and I moved into a slightly bigger apartment closer to town. 2 bedrooms, a little balcony overlooking the street, and a kitchen that always smelled like coffee and cinnamon toast. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Every morning, sunlight spilled across the faded wooden floor, and for the first time, the house didn't echo with silence or fear. At first, Sophie was quiet. She'd sit by the window, drawing little pictures in her notebook, mostly of clouds, cats, and sometimes her mother. I hung the first one she gave me on the fridge, a stick figure drawing of us holding hands under a bright yellow sun. She wrote, "Uncle Daniel plus Sophie equals home." That one nearly broke me. She started therapy twice a week with a counselor named Marla, a kind woman with patient eyes who had a soft spot for kids who'd been through too much too soon. The first few sessions were rough. Sophie barely spoke. She'd flinch at sudden sounds, and sometimes she'd cry in the middle of the night, whispering, "Don't lock me up again." But slowly, something shifted. One afternoon, about a month later, I picked her up from her session, and she came running out with a smile, a real, full smile, holding a drawing of a tree with little hearts in the branches. "Marla says this is my safe place," she said proudly. I looked at it, my throat tight. "It's beautiful. Where's this tree?" She grinned. "It's in my dreams now. Mommy's there too. She says it's okay to be happy." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just nodded and said softly, "She's right." Life started finding rhythm again. I enrolled Sophie in a new school. She was nervous at first, clutching my hand so tightly on the first day that my fingers went numb. But a few weeks later, she came home talking about a girl named Lila who shared her lunch and asked if they could do a project together. It was small, but it was everything. At night, we'd make dinner together. She loved helping stir spaghetti sauce or sprinkle cheese on pizza. Sometimes she'd hum little songs under her breath while doing it. I hadn't realized how beautiful a child's hum could sound until then. One Saturday, she pointed at a flyer posted near the grocery store. "Animal Shelter Adoption Day." Her eyes lit up. "Can we go, Uncle Daniel? Please." We went that afternoon, and that's how Sonny came into our lives, a tiny orange kitten with more energy than sense. Sophie named him because, as she said, "He's warm like sunshine, and Mommy says sunshine means God's happy." Sonny followed her everywhere after that, curling up beside her every night. Sometimes I'd stand in her doorway and watch her sleep, her arm draped over the cat, her breathing soft and even. That sight alone was enough to make every sleepless night, every painful memory, worth it. A few weeks later, the court hearing arrived. The room smelled like old paper and polished wood. Sophie sat beside me, her small hand clutching mine as we waited for the judge to speak. The CPS investigator, Karen, smiled reassuringly from the front row. She'd been with us through it all. After reviewing everything, the evidence, the testimony, the reports, the judge looked down at us and said, "Given the circumstances and the child's clear bond with her uncle, I see no reason she shouldn't remain in his custody permanently. Congratulations, Mr. Simmons." For a second, I couldn't move. Then Sophie looked up at me, eyes shining. "Does that mean I get to stay with you forever?" I nodded, my voice breaking. "Yeah, kiddo. Forever." She threw her arms around my neck, and in that courtroom full of strangers, I held her like the most precious thing in the world, because she was. Afterward, Karen smiled and said quietly, "You did more than save her life, Daniel. You gave her a new one." I didn't know what to say except, "She saved mine too." The months rolled by, and life slowly turned normal. We built new traditions: pancakes every Sunday, movie nights on Fridays, morning walks to the park where Sophie loved feeding ducks. She started keeping a small photo of Emily on her nightstand, surrounded by her drawings. Sometimes she'd talk to it before bed, whispering about school or Sonny's silly antics. One evening, I asked, "Do you miss Mommy a lot?" She nodded but smiled softly. "Not like before. I think she's happy now. I think she knows I'm safe." Something in me loosened when she said that, like a knot I'd been carrying finally came undone. A year after that stormy night, we visited Emily's grave together. Sophie placed a bouquet of sunflowers on the headstone and whispered, "Hi, Mommy. It's me and Uncle Daniel. We're okay now." The wind rustled the trees, gentle and warm. For the first time, standing there didn't hurt. It felt peaceful, like closure. As we drove home, Sophie hummed quietly, Sonny meowed from her lap, and I realized the storm had finally passed. Not just outside, but inside both of us. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about my parents. My father remains in custody, awaiting trial. My mother wrote once, begging forgiveness. I don't hate her anymore, but I haven't written back. Some things take time. If I've learned anything, it's that blood doesn't define family, love does. When I hear Sophie laugh now, I know Emily would be proud. Proud of her daughter. Proud of us both. Because that night, the one when an 8-year-old called me crying in the storm, didn't just change her life. It saved mine too. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. If you were in my place that night, if someone you loved called for help like Sophie did, what would you have done? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, please take a second to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps more people find stories like this. Thank you for watching and being part of this journey. Wherever you are tonight, I hope you hold your loved ones a little closer. Stay safe, stay kind, and I'll see you in the next story.